we go. That's a great way to kick it off. Hey everybody, it's 5 Watt Live brought to you with the support of TrueFire. More about my good friends at TrueFire later on in the stream. As the year comes to a close, I inevitably spend time thinking about where I've been and where I'm going. Planning is something I'm always doing, and I'm always looking for systems and sometimes more importantly, language to describe what it is I'm still looking to get done between here and the end. I told David Barber that I was thinking about talking about getting older and making priorities and asked him if he thought it was a little bit morbid. To which he responded, I don't know about morbid, but it certainly seems like you. I guess that about covers it. So let's talk about that. What's left to do and how to plan to make sure we get it done. All right. If you like the style of video, make sure to take a minute to subscribe. I was looking at my analytics before I did this today, and it tells me that 61% of the people that watch videos, I don't think on the live. I think the live is like, as I joke, we're all friends here. But I think overall, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit the button for subscription. 61% of the folks that watch are not subscribed. I'd like to make that last push to 300. I understand it's probably an ego metric. I'm human. I'm okay with that. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and click that button for me. It helps me out, especially when I'm working with potential sponsors. All right, they focus on subscribers instead of view counts. I'm trying to educate them as I go. To support what we do, grab a t-shirt, hoodie. I got a picture of me in a red hat. The Barber Bus and Plus pedals are out there. You can get those on the REVERB store. And if you want to become a bigger part of 5 Watt World, sign up for the Friends of 5 Watt on Patreon. There's a friend level to suit any budget. And if you've always wanted to have your own YouTube channel but didn't know where to start, buy my YouTube Mastery for Musicians course. It's all the things I wish I knew. I've put it on sale again until the end of the year for $199, which usually it's $299. All right. As I said, that was David Barber in the intro there. Playing with some friends. It's the music he wrote and performed for the recent 335 Short History remake. I'm remaking a few videos that I made really, really early in the channel, where I have that sort of deer in the headlights, early teleprompter kind of face, and I didn't have all the connections that I have now at Carter Vintage and Wildwood. And other people, friends like Jeff and David to play on the videos. So I have a lot more chance to show examples of the original historic guitars and stuff. So I just really wanted to remake those. Anyway, David is playing a fairly current Gibson 335 into a 5 Watt World Barber bus pedal running on the JTM 45 side, into a Universal Audio Dream 65, which is running absolutely clean, and then straight into his computer. So all the gain error on the JTM 45 side is coming from the bus. I'm going to be talking about some ideas around planning for next year, or even the rest of your life. Or if you're a much younger person, maybe you're just the whole of your life. When I get to the end, I'll go ahead and share some of my goals. But this is not what this video is about. This is not about what's Keith going to do with the channel. Who cares about that stuff besides me and maybe David a little bit. But when I get to the end of this video, I'll share some of the things I'm trying to get done for the next year and into the next couple of decades. But while I'm going through this, I want you to put some of your musical goals for the next year, put them in the chat. And when you're doing this, I'm not talking about so much about a particular piece of gear you're looking to buy. I'm looking, unless like the thing you need to do is buy your first guitar because you want to start playing. That, I guess we would let that go. But otherwise, things you want to do. Yeah, I actually put do in caps if you're wondering why I'm talking like that. Do. These are things about doing things, and they're capitalized in my notes. All right? How's that? I see people rolling in here. That's great. Let's get started. Oh, Bebe is not here. Bebe started traveling for the holidays already. And getting to another part of the world. I'm going his direction. I think he's coming mine a little bit. Not to upstate New York, but who would do that? But besides an upstate New Yorker like me. Anyway, so let's talk about this. Let's talk about planning and goals, etc. A couple of years ago, at my script editor Perry's urging, I read Marie Kondo's book. I can throw it up on the screen here. The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. This book is about cleaning out our space and getting organized in general, while we take a hard look at why we own what we own. A book like this is good for if your channel tagline is most music from the least gear. My space tends to be pretty tidy. Let me take this back off the screen. My space tends to be pretty tidy. When I worked at the university, I used to joke to the faculty that marveled at my empty desk, that my desk was tidy, but my brain was messy, just as messy as the next person's. Lots of stuff laying around in my head, always a challenge to know what to look at next. So I didn't need a new process for folding my t-shirts, but in the book, Kondo also talks about an exercise that I've talked about here before, because it really kind of echoes for me, where we imagine our perfect day, where we sit down and we try to, from the time we wake up until the time we go to bed, we imagine what a perfect day would look like for us. What would be an ideal, I think she says ideal day. What would an ideal day be? And this will tell us, she says, this will tell us what we need to have. I'm gonna get my picture out of my way so I don't look at myself. The real trick of this is, of course, knowing what it is we want and what is the most important. This is a hard exercise. And in this next book I'm gonna talk about, this next book helps with the motivation to imagine that perfect day, because our days aren't limited. And it's not an easy exercise to sit down and try to think about what a perfect day would look like and get motivated to do that. So a lot of these ideas that I'm going to talk about next come from a book by a guy named Bill Perkins, who is a commodities trader, an energy trader, I think, out in Houston. And his book is called Die with Zero. I think this came out about 10 years ago. And Perkins wrote it when he was 50. I should have checked these dates. I'm pretty sure that's right. Like the Kondo book, the takeaway for me was less about the big overall theme of the book, which is really about, it is related to this, but more take time to decide what it is we want. And in this case, when are we going to do it? Perkins, in the book, Perkins is encouraging us to not think traditionally about saving for retirement. Sure, we should be saving, but we should also be strategically spending to maximize our life, to create strategies for collecting memories more than money. We all need to get serious about what we're hoping to get done while we're here and, well, get to it. The bits from the book that have been taking up space in my head have really fallen into three categories. And these are the three categories I'm going to talk about. How long do you have? What are the stages of that time? And how does that influence the gear that we'll need in each stage? See, told you, a little bit more of it. It's not really. I did listen to this. I said read, but I actually listened to it on audio. And Roman and I listened to it get together a bunch of times. Although I have to say that we both, I'm going to talk about an exercise. We both did the exercise, and it is a little daunting. It's daunting to actually face the fact that we're not here forever. God, in the 80s, I read an article about why men were getting married later. And there was a guy that was interviewed who said, I'll never forget this quote, I have yet to forget it. He said, I suffered through my 20s and 30s, I suffered under the adolescent notion that all things were still possible. It was a piano player who also thought about going back to med school, or going to med school. I suffered under the adolescent notion that all things were still possible. Because of course, as time goes by, just like the book Essentialism tells us, when we say yes to one thing, we're really saying no to something else. And we do have a finite amount of time. I think about this when I think about how I'm not a great country kind of style player. And I think, well, I can do some jazzier things than my country playing friends. When I was working on those things, I wasn't working on this other thing. You say yes to one thing, you say no to something else. So let's do these in order. How long do you have? And let's get it out of the way. This is an important starting point because it is, even if it seems a little bit maudlin. If you're anywhere near middle age, this first exercise feels probably more important than if you're just about to reach 40 maybe, which of course is still middle age probably. Perkins encouraged us to go use any of the number of online actuarial-based calculators to try to figure out how long you're likely to live. Very cheery, right? I've liked the one that I put in the link the best, which is the University of Connecticut one. Probably because it had a lot more questions than most, and because it told me I would live the longest. But if you go to the description, there is a link to the University of Connecticut quiz, and the first page of it looks like this. It's the Janet and Mark Goldenson Center for Actuarial Research. If I can't, I can make it smaller. And then you can see it starts with your gender and your age and weight, and it asks you a whole bunch of questions, but it's really just one page. You literally could do it while I'm talking about it here, and then we'd all be here to support you if you didn't like the answer. It asks the questions you'd expect. Do you smoke? How much do you drink? What do you weigh? How tall are you? That kind of thing. And then it summarizes that, and it summarizes your healthy life expectancy, which is the phrase they use, and it gives you an output. This is mine. This is my output, and you can see some of my answers there. This is about how long you're expected to live once you retire, and how long you can expect to have a healthy life at that point. And you can see that here it says you're expected to live 33.3. I think I left this alone and said I was going to retire at 65. I'm not going to retire at 65. That's next spring. So I'm probably going to retire later, but it doesn't really, in my case, it didn't really change the total amount of time it expected me to live. Your relatively healthy life expectancy is about 63.8% above average. I eat well. I try to get enough sleep. I struggle with all that kind of stuff. I have had some health stuff, though, that isn't represented in this. Get this out of the way. I've had some health stuff that's not represented in here. So, it's kind of one of those, you never, I'm trying not to swear here. You never know. You just never, delete expletive, know. So this is a great start because it puts in perspective for somebody like me, how many more decades I'm looking at. How much more time am I really talking about dividing up and getting things done? I heard a thing a couple of years ago on the radio. There was a guy who wrote a book, or maybe it was in the middle of an interview, and then people picked it up as a sort of a verbal meme. And it was talking about somebody who lived in another part of the country, and he was traveling home once or twice a year to see his parents. The guy was sort of like in his prime of his career in his mid-40s. And his parents were still alive, and the interviewer says, well, how often do you get to see them? And he's like, I go home a couple times a year. And he goes, okay, well, you're 40, you probably live to be, if we're lucky, 85. Your parents are probably going to live maybe another 25 years. So you're going to see your parents another 35, 40 times total. Whenever your parents, you're checking one of those 30 or 45 times off. The guy who wrote this book, Bill Perkins, actually talked about having an app on his phone that he took the information, you take the actuarial information, and you can buy, there's multiple apps that do this for your phone. I looked them up in the iPhone world because that's what I have, but I'm sure they have them for everything, that actually do a countdown to your life expectancy to remind you that every day is precious, and as Just Plain Blaze is saying, be mindful of tomorrow, but live for today, right? Yeah. So I don't want to be a bummer about this, but I do want to motivate us, including myself, enough to be serious about, did you ever think you wanted to go to Tokyo, in my case? Like that, but one time when I studied martial arts, going to the East was a really big deal. Go to China, go to Japan. And I'm not sure that's on my list anymore. So that's the first thing on there. That's the first thing. The thing that life expectancy, I'll take that off there. The thing that life expectancy thing does not do, because it's kind of impossible to do, and it has a lot to do with what's possible, is it doesn't break into stages that Perkins goes into. And as anybody that's done much project planning will tell you that that is the first step. You got to know how much time you have. If there are things you want to get done, the first step is having a real conversation about how long you have to do them. That's what this is. That's what that actuarial stuff does. It's a hard look at how long we probably have still to accomplish our goals. It's a big deal. And you can see why I asked David the question I did. But it's important if we want to get things, there's things we still really want to get done. And I'm going to cover some of those things. And I apologize to anybody who's here who's 25, but if you're 25, think about these things and have a conversation with your dad about it, or your mom, or both. So what it doesn't give you is a good sense of the three stages that Perkins calls, and I don't think he made these up, called the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. Got it? Go-go is when you're optimally healthy, and your health really doesn't impact what you might decide to do. Since I'm about to go to Paris in 2 weeks, I keep thinking of the analogy of walking 20,000 steps a day as my gauge of go-go at my 64 years of age. I had this conversation with Rick the other day. I did the online survey with him. He and I are about the same. He's almost exactly the same score I got, except he's 2 years younger than me. So he's going to outlive me by 2 years, according to the Yukon people. But the reality is, I said something about 20,000 steps. He's like, dude, who walks 20,000 steps? I'm like, well, I walk 10, 15,000 steps most days. So 20,000 is not a big imagining. But how long I'll want to keep doing that is a different kind of question. more specifically, how long can I plan on feeling well enough to want to do it? 5 more years? 10 more years? I'll need to get better at doing my daily yoga, I'll tell you that, because I have not been doing that very well for the last 6 months. And I would say for me, yoga is the only thing that makes me feel younger, looser. That stretching really makes the biggest difference. But probably in the end of 5 or 10 or 15 years, I'm going to definitely be at the end of my go-go years. He basically lists the go-go years as like prime earning and no health issues yet. I would say that it's between, he says between 45 and like 48. So, all right. So in a musical world, in a musician's world, I've seen this equate to how long do I want to keep doing late night bar gigs? Or at this level of touring, you know, where I'm in a van, how long do I want to keep doing this? So, and I've got other examples of that. The next category is the slow go years, where Paris is still okay, but maybe you make sure you don't book an Airbnb on the 5th story without an elevator. And by the way, I don't book without an elevator either. I want to burn my steps out on the street, not on the stairs. Slow go for a musician might be the move to daytime cover gigs, or like I know a lot of players who are in their 70s doing that kind of gig, playing in Beatles cover bands or all kinds of things like that. But I have friends who are in their late 70s who kind of have a regular circuit of playing at retirement communities in the middle of the afternoon. And the people that they play for absolutely love them. They are wildly popular. You know, when it comes to slow go versus no go, I always remember this story. I used to live next door to a couple that were in their early to mid 80s, Mary and Peter Buchthal. This is way back when I was in my 30s and I bought my first house, and they lived next door. And Pete was still doing tons of stuff around the house. He would put a new roof on the back shed. He would just do it very slowly, a little bit at a time. And they had gone from those walking vacations in Europe to doing vacations where they would do river cruises in Europe, where they'd get on a boat and they would just go into town to a cafe, have lunch, get back on the boat, and ride along and look. And so I had a conversation with Mary, and I said, you know, Mary, I just am blown away by the amount of travel you guys are doing at this point in your life. I said, have you ever thought about doing one of those Alaska, you know, interchannel cruises? And she looks at me right in the face and she says, they tell me that I can do that from a wheelchair. So I'm saving that one. So she was saving that for the no-go years, when you're past the go-go years. So Perkins points out that these stages, that in these 3 stages, you don't need more money in your go-go year. That you do need more money in your go-go years than you'll need in your slow-go or no-go years. I'm going to point out that this is probably true about how much gear we need as well. I often talk about how many guitars I would have if I wasn't running the channel, but that's coming out of the same line of thinking. Another point, by the way, in Die with Zero is that you're going to give your kids, if you're going to give your kids or charities money when you die, he encourages you to do it now. Do it while you're alive. Do it while you're here and can see the benefit of that giving. Get to experience the positive impact of the gift while you're alive. So maybe same with your gear. Why leave the pile of gear for your kids, or worse, you know, to saddle your spouse with having to get rid of it? If you're thinking of leaving your kids a 62 ES 335, why not give them the 335 now and play some blues together with it? Trim down to what you need for each phase of your life. I find there are guitars that I need to have for the channel, for a thumbnail, testing amps, pedals, or if I'm successful in planning for next year, I'm going to talk about it, in going ahead and playing some music on videos, making more time to play. But when I get retired, really retired, and I'm not making any videos anymore, I think about how many guitars I'm going to need. That's one of the things I think about regularly. How am I doing for time here? I'm ripping through it as always, right? Yeah, it's 20 minutes after. Knowing I was going to go to Paris, I read a book called, you know what, this is kind of the third thing. Let me run the TrueFire ad, and then I'm going to look in the thing, and then I'll come back here. How's that? We'll take a break from my mumblings and my ramblings, and we'll do the TrueFire ad, and we'll come back. All right? Be right back. I reached out to TrueFire to be my sponsor because I'd used them for years. I'm currently having fun going through Adam Levy's Pocket Rhythm course. With over 2 million users worldwide, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced level player, TrueFire has lessons to enhance and inspire your playing. Get 35% off courses using the promo code 5watt35, or like I do, sign up for the All Access Pass to use the entire TrueFire catalog. I really like TrueFire, and I think if you give them a shot, you'll like them too. Sign up using the link in the description to support 5 Watt World and get some great lessons at the same time. I'd like to thank TrueFire for their support in making this video. There we go. All right, we got that box checked. There's a lot of good stuff in the comments here. I'm torn about where to go. It's my favorite comment that I've noticed out of the corner of my eye so far. Veronica says, I turned 78 next month. I've already lived longer than I expected. Frankly, I'm both thankful and surprised when I wake up every morning. Lots more music to learn. That's right on brand, as they say for the video of the day. All right, so let me, remember, go ahead and put things that you want to, I'm coming to the part where we talk about what do you want to do for next year. So let's get those in the comments so I have those to spend the second half of this broadcast on. All right, so knowing I was going to make the trip to Paris, I was reading a book, listening while I walk, Paris to the Moon by Adam Gopnik. I think it was written in the late 90s because I've talked to a lot of people that have read it. People commented after I mentioned it once before. It's about a writer, a magazine writer that moves to France with his wife and small son in 1995. There's a number of interesting observations about the differences between French and American life. He points out that being a waiter in France is a professional job, something you can afford to do for your entire life because they pay their waitstaff a livable wage. There's this stereotype of waiters being haughty in France, but they take their work very seriously because it's their career. This isn't a job that they're doing while they're working on their other career. They're serious about doing this well, and maybe perhaps doing that forever. And then Gopnik says this. He says that he thinks that the French define themselves by what they do, and Americans define themselves by what they own. Let me say that again. Gopnik says that he thinks that the French define themselves by what they do, by which he means their job, their profession, and he thinks Americans define themselves by what they own. It blew me away, and immediately I was like, hey, that's not true. And then the kind of kid of the 60s and 70s that I am, was like, wow, to the extent that that might be true, it's kind of scary. Do we think that having things actually says something about who we are? That owning that white, large headstock Strat, I got a visual here. Can move Jimmy over just a little. No, can't get my picture back on the screen. That's high level stuff here, guys. Do we think owning that large headstock Strat takes us any closer to being Hendrix? It's a pretty scary idea that he puts out, and I'm worried that it feels more true than it should. It left me wondering that if that's why we hold on to things till the end, if they're tied up with our identity about who we think we are, not so much with our playing, or particularly our playing goals, especially as we get to the no-go years. But if we go back to where we started, that we are here to collect memories more than things, this is a powerful statement. And that's what Perkins says will sustain us in our slow go and no-go years. If you question this, spend some time with someone who's over 80 and notice how quickly they can recall something from 60 years ago, often in great detail. I'm actually going to go put up my mom's Christmas tree. My mom is 87. She'll be 88 around the same time I turn 65 next year. That's because those memories are often playing in their heads. They collected them, and now they are replaying them. Neurologists will tell us that replaying memories triggers many of the same parts of the brain as when the original experience was happening. You're replaying not just the visuals, but also the feelings. And as I wrote that, I realized maybe that's backwards. Maybe you're replaying the feelings, but you also get to see the visuals in your head. So our real goal is collecting memories more than collecting stuff. Our gear certainly, especially our gear. It's why spending money on experience is so much more satisfying than buying something. Right after buying a new instrument, except for the music that might come out of it, the thrill of the purchase immediately starts to fade, whereas an experience is there playing over and over again in your head. As we look into the next year, what are your goals as a musician, and what gear will you use to help you accomplish those goals? All right, now it's all about you guys. Let me go back over here. And I'm going to do this in reverse order. I'll keep digging back. Scott says, American society value possessions over substance. I blame marketing and consumerism. That's absolutely true. And of course, at the same time, we get to choose. That's absolutely true. Jason says, someone wiser than me said, the things you own end up owning you. Yeah, actually, I heard David Grissom saying in an interview that he had about 45 guitars, and he said that very thing. He felt like at some point there was too many instruments, and with all the maintenance that he had to do on them and changing strings and all this kind of stuff, that he was doing that. He felt like the guitars were owning him. Thomas says, after 25 years of being a bedroom player, next year I aim to finally play with other musicians and maybe even play publicly for the first time. That's a gorgeous, gorgeous goal, Thomas. I had an experience here on the channel where I make that speech a lot because I did have a time in my life when I gigged and I loved it and I loved the people that I did it with. And a guy was motivated to go ahead and put up a sign in his local music store. And he had two false starts where he got together with people and it just didn't gel. And then he got together with some guys who are about his age. They're all retired. They all kind of decided on the same kind of music. And now they were rehearsing for about 6 months. And now they're regularly gigging in their town. And I have to tell you that that's probably one of the most satisfying emails I've ever had from work on the channel. So. Nights Guy says, first time tuning in on a live and really agree with what you're saying. Nice. Thanks. Parents on $2 a day. I like bread too much to get your parents on $2 a day. Mark from Alaska says, that was my one guitar for every, now it's more like two, but I'm getting older. That was my one guitar. Okay, I guess we're missing, there's another part to that. Jason comes in with a wisdom again. No sense being the richest man in the graveyard. Chef Boy says, my dad says he hopes his money and life run out at the same time. Retired at 55. He's now 90. I got to tell you that book, I'm not dwelling on it here because I'm not a financial channel and I'm not a financial wizard by the least. But it's something I think about a lot. You saw it flash by, but it says I'm going to live a long time, hopefully. While at the same time, I'm kind of still looking at my retirement and going, do I have enough? Am I going to be okay? If you think about it in his terms, you're going to need more at the beginning and less as you go. But you might underestimate and live to be 100. And if that's the case, they actually have insurance for stuff like that. You can actually invest in an insurance policy that helps kind of cover your bet about how long you're going to be here. Mark says, I want a 59 when I get to be 59. Oh, wait. Between two guitars says, quit smoking 10 years ago, quit drinking 4.5 years ago, started playing guitar 4 years ago. I may live forever. Amen. I love it. Victor has got a note here that's reminding us all to spend as much time as we can. Both my parents made it to the birth month, but not birthday. To his birth month, I think he means. Dad would have been 70 and mom 102. Sorry, cats. I appreciate the gender correction. I said waitstaff, I think, at some point. So I see Litve waded in with a super chat. I get it over here. Thanks, Litve, and count on you, man. Darren C says he had a traumatic accident at 58, peak of his career, realized not a single day's guaranteed. I talked at the last live stream about a cancer scare and also that I had spent 6 months in a hospital when I was 56. You never know. And I actually had a chance to talk to my therapist back in Vermont recently, who through his guitar teacher had learned that I mentioned him on that live. and he was amazing, and he's an amazing guy. But the reality is, he was saying that, you know, a scare doesn't always wake people up. I don't have any delusions about this live stream waking somebody up, but you never know. You never know when there's a last straw, where there's a tipping point for somebody. Sergeant Grinch, one of the regulars. I survived 3 cancers. Plan on making people miserable for a long time. I'm 59. Well, we expect you to be here, Sergeant Grinch. Here we go. We got some goals here. My goal is to get my grandson to be at a professional level guitar for playing. Oh, to get him a professional level guitar, get him playing in front of people. That'd be great. Mike says his goal for the year is to want to learn the cage system and triads and learn how to write my own songs. I also want to get better at home recording. Excellent. Wady 1960 CS says, has a goal of dabbling in slide playing. Joey Landreth, arrow posing have intrigued me to the point of taking the plunge. I hear you. I actually do aerials courses periodically, and they usually are the thing that humbles me no end. Cats and Dolls, are you that close to us, upstate New York? I'm in Syracuse, so I don't know where upstate is to you. Every upstater has a different definition, and every downstater certainly has a different definition of what upstate New York is. Alistair says, chord theory. Ray Mears says, he have several music courses from YouTubers. I review them first, but I need to get down to work doing the courses. All right, I've probably been reading long enough here. There's a nice sentiment. Skip Green says, best way for me to practice at home is to access the old emotions of playing live. That's a beautiful image there, Skip. Scott Pickett says, I'm 70, still working full-time and have a part-time cover band. My goal is to make an original music CD. You do that, Scott, and we will talk about it on the channel. How's that? Veronica says she's looking forward to the day. I only want one guitar. Jazziano says, my goal is to start recording with my home studio and do a first gig at the local pub. Amen. I've actually thought about doing some local things with a couple of the people from the Acoustic Jam, but I gigged for a long time, weekly. I had a weekly for a long time, and that's not the thing I miss the most. It's still just playing with other people. So I'd like to find something where I'm doing it more than once a month, where I'm playing music with other people. All right, let me tell you what I'm thinking of trying to do this year, since I just started doing it. I'm looking to make some small changes in how I make videos, add 1 or 2 people tops to help pull up pictures of gather images from the research and editing to help free me up to do more writing and playing, and maybe play on some of the videos even this year. Get back to doing that like I did at the beginning of the channel. I'd like to get together with friends more, as I just said, and play through tunes. I'd like to get out of this chair more and go out to lunch. I want to continue to expand working with people trying to start a YouTube channel and work on promoting my course more in the new year and make new modules to go in it. I have a list of about a dozen new little videos that I'm going to add to the course. And last month I did the first live stream with people that bought the course, and I'm going to do a monthly live stream with people that bought the course where we just take questions and we all kind of share with each other what's working and what's challenging. All right. So that's that. John MC. John, are you new here? I guess he doesn't know the tagline. My goal is to get just one more guitar. There's a video that I did called, John, and everybody here will tell you that they probably watched it. There's a video I did. It was the third video I ever made called How Many Guitars Do You Need? And I would say probably a third to half of the answers were the classic N+1, where N is the current number of guitars, or just one more, all of those kinds of things. I got so worn out by the idea that the answer was that pat or funny that I actually started deleting those comments years ago. I didn't do the video to espouse everybody should have one guitar. I don't care how many guitars you have. I just want people to question whether or not they're collecting guitars in lieu of playing, or especially in lieu of playing with other people. I think we've become not just a society of bedroom guitarists, but a society of bedroom hobbyists. When I was growing up, I was in 4-H, which is like a very rural American thing for farmers, really. But when I was doing it, it was in the late 60s and early 70s, so it also included things like ecology and forestry. But we had to do things like demonstrations where we had to do public speaking as a kid, like 11 years old, doing a public speaking thing. And it was really helpful, even though I still get really nervous when I do these things. Any public speaking, I think if it matters, you're going to get nervous. But it was a great experience. And all of those kind of experiences, whether it was like when I was really little, taking my sheep to the fair, or doing those demonstrations, or going on trips with other 4-Hers, they were all these kind of social activities that the closest thing we seem to have to that now is sports, and organized, like big soccer mom kind of sports where people go all the time and they're doing lots and lots of things, supporting their kids' hobbies, and not doing hobbies where we get to meet other people and, spend time, as I said, going out to lunch more and going out to lunch with other people, spending more time with each other. So when I am along that lines, when I am in Paris, like I did when I was in New York last year watching at Rick's show, I'm going to do a live meetup when I'm in Paris. And I know a couple of people from the channel well enough there to do that. I'm going to put up a post in Instagram and also in Instagram, but also in the channel with a day and time suggested, and to get people together that live in Paris but watch the channel. And what happened in New York was that there literally were people who knew each other but hadn't seen each other in years. And it was great because they told me afterwards that they ended up getting together more and actually playing music together more, which was huge. As I said a minute ago, completely on brand. So, Chris Quinn says, I would really mainly like to be more regularly involved in the great music community around me, more playing, grateful for the one rehearsal a week right now, but I need more to move forward. 55. Steve Liberty basically sums this up, says he's struggling, but has True Fire, but he's struggling to get time to use it. Totally feel you. I have been on a big push to be able to be away and have a video to release while I'm gone, basically making a video and an extra video. So I haven't had time to play as much time as I would like. And then when I'm away, I won't play at all, of course, while I'm in Europe. Bert Gerbil says, I'd like to be in a band, too old to take over the world or anything, though. I hope we're all too old to take over the world. James Caldwell. No, I wouldn't take money on my retirement to do the All Access Pass. I think if you're like me, you probably could buy fewer cups of coffee and get your all access pass. Or you know what? I actually tell people when it comes to TrueFire, I always have stuff around here. I mean, I run a YouTube channel, gear channel, right? Or a non-gear, as Rick always says, a non-gear gear channel, anti-gear gear channel. Look around for something that you don't use as much as you should. Sell that and buy TrueFire. Buy lessons with that. Victor and I think we have the same number of guitars right now. It's starting to weigh on my mind, Victor. But you're right, repair and setup is a big deal. Figures that Jesse would come in with a good one here. Bowling Alone is a good book that talks about that. I'm going to look that up. I don't mean to slam on people that are studying things and doing things on their own. I was a huge reader. Honestly, I was a massive reader before I needed bifocals. And then I kind of took a break, and then I moved towards audiobooks. And basically I had a commute of an hour a day for 25 years, and I listened to audiobooks every day, going and coming. So, you know, most people can't find an hour a day to read. So I did a ton of reading, in air quotes. I did a ton of, got through a ton of literature. But of course, that was a solitary pursuit as well. And I look back at that time in my life, and it was in the wake of that I actually did put the band together and had a weekly jazz gig, where I was easily the weakest guy in the band. And it was good for my soul doing that. So, well, Emery, I'm still building a list of places to go. Everybody goes to Paris. I don't think everybody gets to go to Paris. I've been once before, but my wife and I haven't been together. So we're really excited to go. And there's actually a bunch of museums that I didn't do. I'd never been to the Louvre. So, and my dad was an art professor, so that's a little tragic. Oh, here we go. We're veering off. Are buffers necessary on the pedal board? Depends on how long your cables are. Depends on how sensitive you are to loss of high end. And depends on how many pedals you have. Again, we're back to how long are your cables. So I would say you probably have a pedal that has a buffer in it. And if you have a buffer early in your pedal board, that's one thing. And you can have a buffer late in your pedal board. It's different. There's lots of good videos about this. I'm trying to think of one that I could recommend off the top of my head. Maybe David and I got to make one. So. There you go. Jesse gave us the full citation. Jens is here. Hey, Jens, how you doing, man? Jazz is good for the soul. It is good for the soul. It was an amazing time. And I actually had the real book out the other day, noodling through some old standards on some distinctly not jazzy shaped guitars, because I think it's great to just do it all with certain guitars. Thanks for being here, Jens. I have a preference for solitary, Super Lead 100. I have a preference for solitary pursuits for whatever that's worth. Yeah, I think that it is the state of our current state of mankind, that we are at a time where doing things alone, pursuing things alone is just so much easier. The whole world is kind of opened up to collecting information, that it's a very interesting time. We got 15 minutes left in the hour. Is there other stuff people want to talk about? Somebody asked a question, if you're still here, about other topics I'm going to do in the coming year. I have a spreadsheet of about 130 titles. They're not all equally good, obviously. And I just wrote down two new old ones recently today, actually put them in the book. So if there's things that you want to see that I haven't done, or there's histories we could talk about, I'd like to see that. Mark Spurgeon says, "Oh no, I don't sell gear." I have a friend I have a lot of friends who are, who's had a lot of hobbies, and I have a bunch of friends who have one hobby. I worked in higher ed, so I had a lot of people that I knew who were specialists, absolute specialists in one field. But this friend of mine is really into deer hunting and bird. He was the guy that I always used to bird hunt with. And Dick has never sold a gun. He buys guns He buys guns for his son. He buys guns for, all these different reasons. And he says he's never lost one. He's never sold one. So I know the sentiment. But like I said, that's the thing he's been doing his whole life. And this is one thing. Cody says, I'm very fortunate to be in my wife's band and she's in mine, so we stay busy. Biggest gear purchase of all time is going to be this year, a house. That's great, man. And we count on David to answer the buffer question. Buffers are only necessary if your ears say, I'm losing signal in some way. If it sounds good, then it is good. There you go. There you go, from the horse's mouth. Odd Man Out says, I'm 71, retired 4 years ago and still in a cover band. Also started playing cello in a local community string orchestra. I think that any time spent making music, I couldn't agree more. It's time well spent. I just talked to the Kane Millers, a friend of mine for the channel, lives down in Florida. Kane told me that he actually went back and started, he sang choruses when he was a kid, and he went back and started singing in a community choir. And he's, of course, at this time of year, he's singing Handel's Messiah and stuff like that. But he said that the singing is actually challenging, and he plays in a blues rock band, and the singing in the chorus really has helped him with his breathing and, singing in the band too. So David's being a heckler now. David says, 2025, more gear, less food. I don't know, maybe he's saying he needs to lose a couple of pounds. Guitars of Billy Gibbons, 3 episodes. All right. I actually had one of the thrills of my life recently, in that I had a phone call from Billy Gibbons about the pedals that I make with David, that David builds, that I helped, kind of scope out with David. And it was as surreal as you would imagine. The thing about trying to do a video on Billy Gibbons, I actually have it on my list to do a video that's just about Pearly. Because Pearly is the model, the ultimate, not the penultimate, the ultimate for every other guitar tone that you're hearing from that guy's hands. I actually started playing both of my guitars, including the one that's over my shoulder here, that PRS style Mira with P90s. That one back there, both that and my main Mira X have 8s. And that's Billy. That's Billy's influence. So there's definitely going to be a Billy Gibbons episode. We'll see what we're going to have very specifically. Sound Music says the best thing you can do as you get older is music. It helps you to keep you young. We are in the Village, Florida. I'll play music at least once a week. Once a week, the Beatlemaniacs on Friday mornings is great. That's fantastic. Graham says he's focusing more on playing his own stuff and getting gigs of his own stuff. Is there a gigging world for unique original music up there where you are, Graham? Graham's in Scotland, I think. Hollywood Actress says, I need to have a more consistent practice and playing routine, occupied by work and life responsibilities. It is hard to find time, and I will tell you that in my experience practicing anything, whether it was yoga or playing guitar, 15 minutes every day is way better for your playing than trying to steal an hour on a Saturday afternoon. You're going to progress a lot faster doing 6 minutes of meditation once, every day, than trying to do an hour of meditation once a week. Same thing with guitar, same thing with whatever instrument you're playing, I think. It's good to hear. Graham says, yes, there is a scene. It's not huge, but it's there. That's great. Other video ideas you guys want to talk about? Questions you have, things that have come up in other videos. We just have a few minutes left. I don't need to keep you here. I'm sure everyone has lots to do. I've actually got the guest room bed has things strewn all over it with my bag half packed, trying to decide what I'm going to take, trying to pack as light. What a surprise. I think I have books in the basement on packing. I might be a little OC obsessive compulsive when it comes to packing and trying to travel light and at the same time not look. I mean, there's no question with my bad French that I'm going to be out there as an American, but I try not to stick out like a sore thumb if I can. So Super Lead says, I'm curious to know how you approach the research when you begin a new project. First step is always to get out and see how many books have been published on it. The next step is to frankly read every article I can find. I think I kind of creeped out David Grissom years ago when I met him for the first time because I had literally read every interview he had ever done. But I had read them all within the last couple of weeks before I talked to him. Whereas he did the interviews, over the course of a very long period of time. And I remembered all of his answers. This stuff was still stuck in my head. So I just get my hands on everything I can. I will tell you that it's becoming problematic that Google is getting stirred up with the AI now, because the AI things that are out there are really just mining the internet. And as we all know, the internet is not the encyclopedia. There's no fact checking. There is so much misinformation that is now being repeated and regurgitated from the internet via these new AI programs. One of the ones that struck me immediately was somebody asked me a question and they were just adamant that because ChatGPT had told them that the Rolling Stones used Fender Bassman, early blonde Bassmans on the road. Well, they use Showman on the roads, but a lot of people see those piggyback Showman rigs and they think they're Bassmans. They weren't. They were Showman because they were loud. They were the loudest amps on the planet at the time, or just as loud as anything else, and they probably got them for free. So that's an example of where it's getting a little harder to use the internet at all. I also use, I will go directly to somebody if there's something in a book that questions it. I've been doing enough of these. I'm 33 million views into this gig where I actually have been blessed by being able to have conversations with people like Dave Hunter, or I had a back and forth with Tony Bacon. These guys are the OG, as the kids say. These guys are the original journalists. They did their research. In Tony's case, they interviewed people like Forrest White that were like one of the first employees at Fender. So they have firsthand knowledge, and there's no substitute for that. So then I write up scripts. It's not uncommon for me to write a script and I used to do this more before, that's say 17 or 18 pages. And then I know I really need to turn it into a 12-page script and just start cutting things that are not the story, that were cool little details to me, but are not going to carry the person forward in the video, that are not going to be the exciting things. I sometimes think about releasing like a short history or a very short history and a short history. That would mean editing it twice. So I haven't done that. Hey, Blue is here. Blue Grubius, my buddy. Going to keep trying to get department stores tone out of my garage sale gear. Attaboy. Victor says, Valco amps. I kind of did a Silvertone amps and stuff when I talked about the Dan Electro guitars, because Dan Electro built the amps for Sears and Montgomery Wards in the 60s by hand. I mean, a lot of those are hand-built point-to-point, not even circuit boards, but straight up point-to-point amps. But I'm sure there's books on Valco. It'd be interesting. You mean have JD Simo on to talk about gear? He's a friend of a friend. I don't think that would be impossible. We could send him over to Zach Child's house, and then we could do a conversation with him from there. That's a good idea, Sean. Bernd Gerbil says, my opinion on 8 and 9 string guitars. One of the things that surprises people was that at the end of my first marriage, I might have had some angst. I went through a period of time when I was listening to a lot of metal, and I listened to a lot of like math metal and stuff. And this is 2000, late 2000s. So Meshuggah was like a big part of my playlist. Sepultura, early, really heavy, big time drums, programmed drums, etc. So I might not have the opinion you think, but anyway. Huh. This is a great idea. David says that he thinks a good way of practicing is to build up a repertoire and then like covers and then have a basic techniques, work on those techniques and playing them cleanly. I try to play a certain number of Pat Metheny tunes that, were originally done on acoustic. And I was laughing, that I was laughing with Adam Levy that I've played them on the channel, but I never trigger the copyright thing. So I don't play them accurately enough to trigger the copyright. I could annoy the Parisians with French curses. I actually have a book that's a 2-volume book about French curse words, but I don't think that's a good idea. Santiago Mosso says that an episode about speakers. I'm really encouraging David Barber, who is much more of an expert in a lot of the really nuts and bolts things. It just has a lifetime of experience that I don't have. About doing speakers and very specific things like that. I actually just ordered a Universal Audio Dream pedal because David has one and he used it for the music that you heard at the beginning, thinking that we could actually use the same exact rig with our pedals that we do together, and then we'd be having sort of a bass line. And even though I have a really nice deluxe, even if we match that speaker with mics and everything, thered be a lot more variables. With something like a Dream 65, we know that we'll have basically the same deluxe, in air quotes. So actually, and my buddy Zach Childs, I pushed him and he did a speakers in Deluxe Reverbs episode, and that was very interesting. I really enjoyed that. Paul Crane says, would you be interested in doing a guitar's gear of The Cure? The new album is good. That's great to hear. I was in a jazz coma during the years of The Cure, so it wasn't a band that I was into, so I would be at a disadvantage, to say the least. I am planning to do because I used to live in Vermont and was in the middle of the hurricane at one time, I do plan to do a guitars of Trey Anastasio and Fish. And one of the reasons is that Eastwood actually is doing a laminate version of the guitars that Paul Languedoc builds. And I guess they can't keep them in stock. So my buddy in Tuscany there, he's got a whole bunch of things. I have a bunch of amps. The challenge of amp videos is that they don't do as well as guitars anywhere near. And all the videos take the same amount of time to build, whether they get a lot of views or not. So it's always a little tough. I've actually talked to the current owners of Magnatone about doing a Magnatone short history. It's on the list. Steve Liberty chimes in saying that a new guitar still gives him joy. I don't disagree. And that guitar is new this year. It's one that I owned before, and I went back to it because I'm finding that shape really works for me. So anyway. Says, can I climb up to Sacré-Cœur? I've never been up to Sacré-Cœur. So I will climb up there this year. I'm going to stay the first week in Saint-Germain, and the second week I'm actually going to stay up in Montmartre. So Valvetone says it's going to live to be 97.6. Yeah, I'm with you. I liked, like I said, I like the Yukon thing. If you want to maybe balance that, go and do some other of the online actuarial surveys around how long they think you're going to live. Anyway, Vern Chervill's going to give me a pass and say that I know gent. I don't know gent, but I know some. I think Prince is underrated across the board. Both his impact, his guitar playing. Rick just did a video about Mr. Beast being interviewed and not knowing who Prince was, which is criminal. And that probably just has to do with the fact that Mr. Beast, James, is young. He's too young to remember. So that's a very interesting point. Guitars of Prince, see, that's another example. I do actually, part of my research, I'll go in and see how much traffic there is in Google to see how prevalent the request for information about the artist is, because I really can't afford to do 2 weeks, 2 weeks and not have the video do well. They're copies of Paul Languedoc's guitar. I think Paul worked with them. I also was in touch with the guys at Circle Strings Guitars, because they're working with Paul to put out guitars with Paul using their CNC technology at Circle Strings. But they're not there yet. They were hoping that early in the spring they'd have it together. So hopefully I could do that next year. All right, before we go beating up on one of the biggest YouTubers of all time, I think I better say my goodbyes. I want to thank everybody for being here. I think I wish all of you happy holidays. I actually have a video in the pipe that I'll probably release the weekend after the Christmas holiday. I'll be gone, but it will be in the can and ready to go hopefully by like next Tuesday. As I said, I'm going to put up my mom's Christmas tree tomorrow, and what's better than that? I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to tell you guys how thankful I am for the group, the core group that turns up for the videos. I joke every time I get off a live stream, I'll say to my wife, hey, do you know how many people we had on the live stream in the hour? And sometimes if it's like best amps at home, it's a huge number, like 4,000, but almost always it's about 1,400. So there's about 1,400 people who are absolutely loyal to hitting up a live stream when they're here. So I really enjoy doing these. As I said, I get nervous because there's a lot of prep and there's a lot of juggling. But I want to thank you very much for being here. I will be back after the holidays. I won't do another live until I'm back and off the jet lag. So it's going to be after I fly back January 10th. All right. So again, I'm going to let David play us out. Thanks for being here, and I will look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.